This is the Edify Podcast for the servant.
వాక్యమును ప్రకటించుము, సమయమందును అసమయమందును ప్రయాసపడుము, సంపూర్ణమైన దీర్ఘశాంతముతో ఉపదేశించుము, ఖండించుము, గద్దించుము, బుద్ధి చెప్పుము. ఎందుకనగా జనులు హితబోధను సహింపక దురద చెవులు గలవారై తమ స్వకీయ దురాశలను అనుకూలమైన బోధకులకు తమ కొరకు పోగు చేసుకొని సత్యమునకు చెవియగా కల్పనా కథనల వైపు తిరుగు కాలము వచ్చును.
It is only the third hour of the day. We are not drunk by any means. You just heard 2 Timothy 4, verses 2 and 3 and 4 in Telugu. It is Emmanuel George. Emmanuel is a good friend of mine. Emmanuel and I went to preaching school together at the Memphis School of Preaching. And he is currently, what's the city that you're at now?
I live in Kurnool, Andhra Pradesh.
Okay, so if I'm looking at a map, is that going to be northern or southern India?
It'll be the southern India.
Okay. Yep. So southern India. So he's a southern boy, just like me, born and raised in the South. You said, weren't you from like Andhra Pradesh?
Yeah. Kurnool is one of the districts in Andhra Pradesh, and I live in Kurnool. That is a town. So it's in Kurnool, Andhra Pradesh, India.
Okay, so probably not Indiana on your map, but somewhere close to that. We just got back from polishing the pulpit, 2022. It was great to be back together with everybody. Learned a lot, and Emmanuel's overseeing congregation is the Adairsville congregation, right?
That's right.
They that's actually my home congregation, and from where I was born and raised, and have been gone, I guess, since 2011 maybe. I've been gone since then because I was still policing, and I had transferred to Montgomery PD and then left for preaching school. But anyway, Emmanuel, how long have you been preaching totally?
Well, I would say it's about 6 to 7 years by now, because ever since we both graduated, I have been preaching back home. It's been rough, but it's been great as well. I mean, the first initial years were really rough, but as the time went by, I really learned to preach more, and that is what I got a lot of interested in, and I'm enjoying it. But right now, it's been great so far, and I'm just glad I'm be able to be back here and just to see folks down here, and just being at Polishing the Pulpit is just amazing. A lot of friends, good old friends, and just making new friends, having the great fellowship and meeting you guys is just amazing. You know, like good old times.
Yeah, just like olden days when we were youngsters. Your dad also is a preacher, and Emmanuel is 31 years old, right? 32 and some change, yeah. And but that's what he's been doing. Today's podcast, I just wanted to introduce you to Emmanuel. He's on Facebook, Instagram too. Emmanuel George, is that?
It will be EMMUGEORGE on Instagram. You can search on Facebook as Emmanuel George. It'll pull it up.
Yeah, and that's with the Emmanuel, not Immanuel, because that makes sense. But anyway, so yeah, Emmanuel is he's here in the States until September the 12th.
That's right.
And he's staying with one of the elders and his wife there in Adairsville, a name that you've heard on this podcast, Steve McCaslin. But anyway, Emmanuel, I want to kind of ask you, I mean, in the States, we have things that we have to, I guess, preach against. Some of us are in different regions, and some of us don't, certain issues that, like if you're in southern religious, South Alabama, there's issues that you're not going to face, whereas I, over here in North Metro Atlanta, I will face. And so kind of run us down a little bit of, like, church culture. I mean, is it healthy? I mean, there's a lot of people over there, but also, like, what are some major issues that you're having to face against? I mean, how big is the church there?
Well, when it comes to the Lord's Church in India, it's really growing these days. Because there are a lot of work going on, a lot of missionaries going on, and a lot of brethren coming from the States and helping us with the Lord's Church there, which we are really grateful of. At the same time, back home, when we really face a lot of challenges. particularly from the denominations. So there are a lot of denominations just in a single street. You'll just end up seeing a lot of churches, growing up. Just like here, it's even worse back home. So those people, particularly those who are following the big churches, they don't even have the proper preaching, but still they would just come up and just establish the congregations, and they'll proclaim themselves as the preachers, and then start their own congregations and try to grab all the people and all the things they can do, to keep them attracted. At the same time, these are the main challenges. But in order to teach the gospel, it is easier for us to teach the gospel to the people who are already aware of Christ and of all the Christian things. At the same time, it's challenging for the people who are not Christians. And these days, people are from different communities, like different different religions, like Hindus, Muslims. They're also they're opening their eyes, or they're open to the of changing their religion, their feelings or emotions, and their faiths too. So it's just all about how you reach them. Particularly if you try to reach them in a way that they are doing really well, secularly, financially, and everything. They are just comfortable in their places, in their faiths. But most of the people who comes from the non-Christian families are, those who are struggling in their faiths, those who are struggling in their lives financially. And at the same time, even from the denominational people, it's really hard for the people to tell them the difference between the Lord's Church and the church and the denominations, but we try to teach them about the gospel, and we try to tell them what the real truth is, and we try to explain the difference between that. But not many understand it. But as we study, they understand it. They understand what the Lord's Church is and how it is different from the other denominations. And at the same time, in order to come up, or in order to be into the Lord's Church, there are many challenges that they need to give up, and it's just very challenging for everyone, not just for Christians, but everyone in the communities back there.
So that really don't sound. There's some issues that we don't face. Here in America, it's 2022. You brought up a lot of wealth for those that are wealthy. That's a big hindrance here, and it's amazing how we are, that no matter where we are around the world, human beings are the exact same. Right. And when Paul had to tell Timothy to charge them that are rich not to be high-minded or trust in possessions that they have, we're still having to have that same conversation. And so I guess, over in India, you're going to have that issue too. There's something about those three cores of sin, if you will, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life. That's congruent everywhere. But, like in America, if I were to sit down with just regular Joe Schmo, and let's say that we, like a lot of folks that come in and worship, like at Piedmont Road, we could have 30 to 40 visitors every week, which is big. But they notice some things. Like if they are religious in other circles, other patterns of faith, or they belong to a denomination, they notice things. Oh, you don't use instruments, and you partake of the Lord's Supper every Sunday, and we didn't see any praise teams up front, or bands, or choirs, or where are the women, and they begin to ask those questions, which are great questions, great places to start. But we don't live in an Acts 2 world for the most part, where people have a good, solid ground of education biblically, like they did in the 40s and 50s in America. Now we're having to convince people that there is a thing such as God. So that interests me. I guess it doesn't matter what kind of God a person believes in, other than Jehovah. Whether they themselves are the God, or they believe in a little carved image that they have on their counter at home. How often do you come across foreign gods in your work?
Well, as I told you, I'm from India. So India is a Hinduistic country, and they have about 35,000 of Hindu gods. So in the Hindu religion, each and everything, whether right from the moment they wake up from bed, Right from the moment they see the sun, they believe everything, every visible thing is a god. They worship cows, they worship God, sun, they worship the monkeys, they everything, the trees. Let's just put it this way. Whatever they come across, they just believe it is an incarnation of their gods or any other people. So we have a lot of gods. When I say gods, it's little g gods. So there are a lot of things that the Hindus believe in. But when it comes to Christianity, because we have not heard the gospel until late 1800s or maybe initial 1800s, because the American Baptist missions, when they came while we are still under the Britishers' rule, they brought the gospel, but they focused on the lower communities, in the lower castes who are downtrodden. As you know, our country is divided according to the caste system. They have the hierarchy, they have the priests, the rulers, the teachers, the warriors, and then the last ones are the Dalits, which are the downtrodden and the untouchables. These are the ones who are expelled from the community. So when the Americans came, the American Baptist missionaries came, they mainly focused on these people who are outcasted from the communities. So they focused on them, and they taught them the gospel, the gospel way in a broad sense. But they have established colleges. So when we were under the Britishers' rule, according to our caste, according to the Hinduistic rule and all that, people from the downtrodden areas, they were not supposed to go or to read or to educate themselves. But when the Americans came there, they tried to treat everyone similar in each way. So they tried to teach the downtrodden people. They try to educate them, have same kind of health systems and all that. So that's what they did. They established the congregations, they established the schools, they established the hospitals, and tried to treat them in the same way as everyone is. Even after we got our independence, the guy who wrote about who wrote the Constitution of India, he wanted to eradicate the caste system, but our politicians just kept it that way because of the vote bank system. So it is just, unfortunately, it is still carried out. But again, there are a lot of gods who they have in their houses, whom they worship. So most of coming from the Hinduistic country, it is not just challenging not for the Hindus, for the Christians to reach on to the other people, but it's always challenging to go out into the villages, because some people just believe it and some people are just religious, but they're not really strict or really spiritual about it. But yeah.
So that's neat. That kind of sounds, you were talking about the caste system. That's very Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
You had the priest, you had those who served in the temple, you had this and this and this, and you had, all the way down to slaves. You said the Dalits. Is that what you?
Yeah. D-A-L-I-T-S.
Yeah, that's kind of a. It's just amazing that's the first place that they go to. I mean, even today, like if I was to live in a rural area, if I were to go to a rich neighborhood, you're not going to be received. They're going to smile and say thank you very much, but they've got their God, and they've got their 401k and their Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is an insurance company here in the States, if you catch that reference. But anyway, but if you were to go to the lower income places, if you were to go to, the trailer parks or people that are in poverty or that need something, those are more likely to receive help.
Right.
Well, Jesus said the common man heard him gladly.
Exactly.
So there's something to that. You were talking about, there are different gods and the creation and all that sort of stuff. That takes me to Romans 1, for although they knew God, they did not honor him, verse 21. And it says in verse 22, claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. I guess I could see how that would be very much a lot of the world. In America, there's not a caste system. There's what we call blue collar, white collar, where that's kind of what it is. But you can, listen, if you go buy a scratch off ticket, you go from a blue collar to a white collar immediately. So that's a major difference in America. And I guess when it comes to our democracy and that everybody can have an equal share, no matter where you come from, you can grow to whatever you'd like to be. Some people have it easier, but some people have it harder. So, like, in America, we might face where, just a few weeks ago we were talking about, or a few months ago, really the past few years about, race and privilege and those sorts of things. If you're in your country, you're not discussing those kind of privileges, but you're going to discuss, caste system, I guess. Right. Are there anybody who's in these caste systems? Like if there's a Dalit, why does he not go to folks who are in the upper crust and make his complaint? Is it that's just the way it's always going to be over there, or how do you address that?
Well, I think that is the way it's always going to be, because as our country is mostly though they say it as a democratic country, but still the people are always divided. Even if you want to get out of the caste system, they will not let you go out of it. And as you mentioned earlier, you can go from white collar to blue collar, something like that. But at the same time, even if you come back in our country, if you want to excel in everything, come from a Dalit, from the downtrodden to the highest level, it can only be done through education, and it can only be done through education and hard work. Though you reach that situation, such place, you are still going to be looked down because you came from that place. You're still going to be looked down. I mean, if you reach there, I'm saying again, the chances are very low. But there are only few exceptional cases, because people just try to put it that way, because it's all about the voting bank system. Right now, we have the new president, who he is a the president. She's a lady, because she came from the one of the downtrodden Dalits. So our government, when they tried to go for a voting system, they referred these people, we have implemented this. We want equal system. We want everything. So they try to, manipulate the minds of the people, though they really do not care about all the Dalits. They just want to publicize and just show off themselves that they are doing this. But again, it's really rare that people go from Dalit to the higher places, go to the higher places. But people are always going to look down, no matter how far, how wise you are, and how much of knowledge you gain, and how much of hard work you do, and how much of great position you are in. You're always looked down.
So in our country, where we would say a person is racist if they gauge, it's the opposite of what Martin Luther King Jr. said, that he would say that we look at a person based upon their character, not the color of their skin. Well, that's still true today, but often it's the case in the opposite way. Right. And the pendulum has shifted in some ways, that you're in trouble if you have lighter skin. You're born this way, and you are going to receive the penalty from people's past sins. So like in America, where we have to deal with those kind of race issues, in your country, you would say that even though that they might, very, very small chance, rise to that upper crust level of the caste system, they're still going to be seen as that. So what's wild is that although that may not be racist, there's still some sort of prejudice system that's in place. And that just goes to show us it happened when Peter was there and he sided with the Jews, and Paul rebuked him to the face. Every generation has and every culture has a prejudice. If you're different than me, then you're less than me. That's kind of I don't know why that is. We've just not arrived to that. It's the way it's always been. And what's great is that we read about God has split the division between Jew and Gentile, and you could put in, for our case, an Indian and an American. He has split that divide. And now we sit here with two different hues of skin color, two different dialects, but we're both Southerners and Georgia fans, by the way. Go Dogs. That the gospel has made this appeasement, has fixed this gap. And that's what's weird is, do you have to address that? I mean, in your preaching, or in your teaching, like we may have to address the issue of race and skin color and division over it in America. Do you have to address that in the caste system?
We normally try to address it in a personal studies, because when we take it to the pulpit, there are a lot of different people coming from different castes and different sects, and again, we are talking about the gospel, because this is where the church is something what God has given it in a way that everyone is treated in an equal way. There is no difference between Jew. There is neither Jew. There is no Gentile. In the same way, this is where everyone is going to be treated that way. But unfortunately, this is what all Christians are doing, trying to teach the people, because particularly from the village or the remote area people, they do not understand it. And when we try to teach them and we try to educate them, not just in a biblical and the spiritual manners, but in the system where they are living, people do not like it. Politicians do not like it. When we try to educate them, they realize that where they are, and they realize that they need to change their positions from being, from uneducated to the educated state. They want to get to have a normal life to a better life, and people do not like that. The politicians do not like that, and no wonder our country has been pressing so hard on these on Hinduistic ideas and trying to impose on us, because if people try to know about all this, they will revolt against the politicians. They will revolt against the public officials. So they don't really like it. And even we say that it is a democratic country, there are things that are till today are going against Christianity. Even there are certain places and there are certain incidents that took place very recently where a preacher goes into the town trying to distribute the pamphlets, trying to do the work of God, and he has been beaten down. And there are certain instances like this. It's not a regular on a basis, but there are places which take place. So people are being they're being feed with the wrong concepts. So the Christianity is a poor man's God, or the Dalit's God, or we don't want the westernized God, something like that. So that's what they try to do every time when we try to teach them the truth.
But it sounds like to me, if I'm speaking politically, I don't want a person to understand the gospel. I don't want a person to become educated. I want a person to serve me in my political agenda, or vote for me. Do y'all have a voting system over there? Yeah, so like in the States, you have people here that will play on specific issues, like a Republican may be an alcoholic, but he's going to say, hey, we're not going to kill any babies. Well, then there's, and they'll say, well, hey, we'll vote for him because he's not killing babies, but he's contributing to, alcohol sales. Anyway, people gauge different things that way, in the States. A Democrat might say, hey, we'll kill babies, but at least we're going to have good education systems, and we're going to help the lower man or whatever. And so, like you'll have different candidates that will play on each other, and play on different, sins, or they'll bless or they'll promise or something like that. Hey, if you vote for me, this is what we're going to go for. But I guess that's weird if you're in a country that they don't want you to be educated, and they don't want the Western God, and they don't want the Dalit's God, and that's how they view him. It's amazing when I think about the first century and how both Jews and Gentiles didn't want Jesus for different reasons, but they didn't want him. For the Romans, they said, how foolish is it for your God to die? And the Jews are sitting here thinking, no, our God was supposed to not die, or our Messiah was supposed to deliver us from the power of Rome. And so both of them were wrong, but that's interesting. I mean, this podcast is about preaching, helping preachers, and going through the everyday and things with our families, things with our work, things with our elders. But I wanted to get a different perspective. Being around the world, you've been at this for 6 or 7 years now. Of course, you preached while you were in school, but and your dad was a preacher. I'm sure issues that you face are different, but in some ways they're not. They're core issues. And what's crazy is that it doesn't matter the culture, doesn't matter the color, doesn't matter the caste system. The gospel penetrates through all of that. And, over there are, bukus of Christians there, whereas over here, And when I say Christians, there's more there than there are here, just because of population, But like the gospel, not splitting hairs over soteriology, how a person is saved, but it's amazing how the gospel can spread. And something that I say on the show is that the gospel works if we work it, or God's work will work if we work it. So somebody who's on the other side of the world, facing different issues, facing different societal issues that we don't face, is still able to be effective, still able to grow. I didn't bring you on here to advertise you in any kind of way, but for anybody who's listening and want to help Emmanuel or go see Emmanuel, or wants to get involved in an India work, reach out here. Email me, jake@lifeinchrist.com, or on Facebook. And if you've already Googled Emmanuel George with an E, feel free to shoot him a message. He'll be glad to talk to you about the work and support. One of the things that he did at PTP was to catch up, but also talk to new folks who want to get involved in India, or as Stephen Sutton would say, Indiana. And but anyway,
just down the line.
Yeah, just across the line. Well, man, I appreciate you. We've been great friends for years, and want to keep it that way. And Lord willing, I'll be over there. I'll cross the pond and come on over.
Hey, I really appreciate that, Jake, and it's been really great privilege for me just to talk and share the experiences and the questions you just raised. And it's always interesting, just to share the different views and the cultural things, and also. I'm sure there are a lot of differences here, back and forth. So it's always good to share them and let the people know what exactly we are going through, and how much we are grateful of the great missionaries they have been coming over and the great work they are involved in. And I really appreciate it for all the things you do too.
You said culture, and that made me think. I had to take a cultural awareness class when I went to the Philippines. And over here in America, people will just tell you no, or they'll shut the door in your face. They'll be rude. They'll be whatever. But when I went to the Philippines, we had to take a class, and one of the things we had to look out for was if there was a grandmother or a grandfather or the head of the household, if they were there and we were studying with them, you go straight to them and study with them, because the family will not make a decision if the eldest is not in agreement. Is that the way it is over there?
It's the similar way. The elders were always there. Sometimes the people who can change or who can take the decisions for themselves, they can do it, but it goes back again. The elders are the ones who take care of the family. If they take the decision, then it'll be the whole family's decision.
Yeah, that's weird. Like, over there, they would agree for the sake of agreement, or they would agree just because you're an American. Mm-hmm. So they would not obey from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered to them. That's right. They would obey just because it's polite to obey. Right. That's a whole nother thing. We don't face that here, really. Realistically, we face people that are completely belligerent, and or you have some people that will come here and stay here and that will do they'll do the church thing, but they really don't care. Right. But we don't have that as much here. Yeah. But anyway, fellas, appreciate your work. Just wanted to introduce you to Emmanuel, and feel free to follow him on all the socials. And if you want to get in touch with him, obviously you can. $1 here is 8 rupees there. 80 rupees. And so like $100 here is 8,000 there, and that will feed a family of 4 or 5 for pay the rent. That'll do. That's a month's worth of good stuff. And anyway, we are totally blessed over here. You got something to say?
Oh, I really appreciate for all the things you just mentioned earlier. I'm just thankful for the opportunity God has given to me, and it's because of the brethren like this we are able to do some work. And if there is anything that God enables us to do much more, it's all for His great kingdom, and we just try to do the better we can.
Yeah, 1 talent, 2 talent, or 5 talents, it don't matter, just as long as we get to it. Right. Well, Emmanuel, I love you, brother. And fellas, I love y'all. Y'all keep preaching the word, and may God bless you in the preaching of His word.